Welcome back to Nothing But the Truth. The world is shifting fast. The geopolitical landscape is being redrawn in real time in the Middle East. Historic alliances are being tested and new ones are forming. The US is working to limit Iran's march toward nuclear capability while Israel continues to navigate threats on multiple fronts. At the same time, President Trump's proposed tariff strategy is shaking up global economic norms, aiming to reassert American leverage in trade while protecting domestic industries. Here at home, we're facing threats to our democratic way of life, from disinformation campaigns to ideological extremism in our classrooms and institutions. Some of it comes wrapped in anti Israel sentiment, but make no mistake, this is a broader attack on the West and everything it stands for. And these aren't just theoretical threats. They've already spilled into real world violence. The brutal killing of Yaron and Sarah, two Israeli embassy workers, is a sobering reminder that this hatred is not just rhetorical, but it is deadly. From surging anti-Semitism to the influence of the Chinese Communist Party within our own borders, from bloated budgets to national security vulnerabilities, the battleground is vast, and Congress is right at the center of it. One of the most consequential recent efforts is the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, a sweeping legislative package that reflects a new approach to government funding and national priorities. It consolidates major appropriations, targets waste, strengthens security funding, and sends a clear message about where America stands at home and on the world stage. And that brings me to our guest today. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson from Iowa's 2nd District sits at the center of all of this. She sits on the powerful Appropriations Committee, Homeland Security Subcommittee, and the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. Her committee work touches nearly every major challenge that America is facing right now, from our fiscal future to foreign policy, national security, and the global threat posed by China. Before entering politics, Ashley built a distinguished career in journalism, spending over a decade as a reporter and anchor for KCRG TV in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, earning her 2 Emmy Awards. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson is a fierce advocate for Israel and a champion of American values. She brings clarity, courage, and a deep understanding of what's at stake, both at home and abroad. Ashley, welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Glad to be with you, Trudy, and thank you so much for all you do to help spread the truth. That's what I want to do too, so I'm glad to have a partner and very pleased to join you.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you had a great job as a TV anchor, steady hours, no angry protesters, better lighting. What on earth made you trade that in for Congress?
Yeah, well, I rewind to that time in my life, and yeah, I was a mom to Max and Jax. You know, that's the reason why I wanted to get into public service in the first place. But rewind to like 2015, I was getting out of bed at like 2 in the morning to anchor the morning show, so that schedule was not ideal. But I covered state politics for years, right? And I had a chance to meet directly with state legislators, and I got to see what worked really, really well when they, were able to solve major problems and work together. And then I also got to see when things didn't work really well, and they were disrespectful of some taxpayer money. And I felt very passionately as a taxpayer, I thought I could do better, right? And so I said to my husband, I said, okay, I think I want to do this. I had to leave my job as a journalist, which was really challenging for us. Being a working mom, I'm a mom fighting for other moms, whether it was as a journalist or in my current capacity. But my husband just turned to me and he said, well, I think I need to sell more insurance. And I said, I think you do. So that's when I decided to step up and run and hit the ground running in 2016 in the state legislature, and then ran for Congress in 2020.
Well, it really is totally incredible to see how articulate you are. I think probably your experience as a journalist, helped that, but we're so lucky that you actually made that leap. We really need some voice like yours to step up. And thank you so much for doing that. It can't be easy having 2 children. So you're away half of your time. So how does that work out?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say thank goodness for this thing because we have FaceTime now, which has really helped, obviously with our phones, being able to stay connected. And, my boys know if I don't answer, and they know they can call me anytime, but if I don't answer, I'm really doing something serious because I've brought them out with me to DC from time to time so they can see the work that I'm actually doing. They know if I'm on the floor voting, I'm not going to be able to take their call, but I'm going to try and get back with them as soon as I can. And then when I am home, I make it a priority to be with my family as much as I can. A day like yesterday, I left the house. I still was able to drop them off at school before I went out on the road and did 2 town halls, a meeting at a healthcare facility, and a soldier send off right in the district. So I'm still trying to be a good mom and a good wife, as well as a good congresswoman. And I think you can. It's amazing to see what you're capable of doing when you have to do it all.
Amazing. They say busy people, stay busier, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for actually stepping up because, it is much easier not to. And it's so incredible what your day was like versus the usual person who gets up, takes their kids to school, and possibly has a very regular afternoon before picking them back up. So you're solving the country's problems, and we're grateful. Um, Let's talk about the one big beautiful bill. We've
Yep.
heard that name, we've seen the headlines, but what does it really mean? What's in this bill? Why is it being called such a really big deal?
Yeah. This is I think, transformational piece of legislation for our country, and I was proud to work alongside President Trump to get this at least through the House. We still got to get it through the Senate, but this is for me about the ultimate goal of why I ran for Congress, which was to respect taxpayers. We need to make sure we're protecting the tax cuts because my philosophy is that it's always been your money, it's not the government's money. And so we want to make sure we're protecting that by making permanent the 2017 tax cuts that were set to expire this year. So that's step one. The other really important provisions in the bill, I think, involve the security of our country. So you mentioned, Trudy, the committees that I'm on, and how we really touch national security and a lot of these issues around the world. National security is global security, is the way I see it. So investing in our border security is paramount. It was probably the number one issue I heard about on the campaign trail last cycle. So making sure that we've stopped the flow of illegal immigrants who we don't know who they are, which puts us all at risk. Now we've kind of transitioned into the point where we want to get the bad guys out first, but we do need to have a real deportation effort. So that is included in the bill. And then the other provision that I think I'm really excited about, there's a lot of energy elements in this bill as well. And then Medicaid reform. We have programs, legacy programs that people do need access to, but can't continue in the current state that they're at. And so we've put in some common sense reforms like work requirements, where if you don't have a child at home, or you're not caring for someone who's disabled, or if you're not medically infirm yourself, and you want to take these government benefits, we think you should try to work 20 hours a week. So those are some of the key changes that we made, and I think they're going to save taxpayers billions, if not trillions of dollars over the next 10 years.
So the fact that the bill passed on the first vote, um, which is no small feat, let's be honest about that in today's Congress. So what does that kind of immediate support say about the strength of the bill, the urgency behind it, and how do you see it moving forward into the Senate?
Yeah. Well, I think certainly, when you look at the House right now, the makeup of the House, we have a wide spectrum of viewpoints in our House Republican Conference. And I was really sad to see this be a partisan bill in Congress. But that's where we are right now. We have some folks who just didn't seem to want to support the current status for tax cuts in this country. And I think that's really unfortunate. But we do have a very narrow majority in the House. So being able to get a bill like that through and make some of those, I would say, agreements, that's what Speaker Johnson did so well. And President Trump obviously got involved in that conversation as well. But you have issues in New York, like the SALT tax, that were very, very important to our New York delegation and some California members as well. And then, for my district, I really cared about making sure we could make those tax cuts permanent because If not, my constituents would see on average a 25% tax increase. So I think we have a good deal that I think reflected the wide spectrum of viewpoints in our conference, and I'm hopeful the Senate looks at that and says, "Hey, the House put out a pretty good product here. Let's not mess with it too much." But obviously, I understand their need to go through it and make sure they want to put their touches on it as well.
How much do you think President Trump had an input on having all of the members fall into line? It just didn't work that way in the last Congress, but yet this, rolled right in so smoothly.
Yeah. Well, I certainly think there were a lot of conversations that had to be had, and some of those were probably tense. I was not necessarily in the room at the time, but I think what is important to note is that the speaker and the president, they all started these conversations from the ground up, right? So they knew where people's passions were, they knew where people's concerns were from day one. And so being able to have President Trump engage and get it over the finish line last week, I think was absolutely critical. And I think he'll do the same with the Senate, right? He'll have those one-on-one conversations with people who he needs to, because ultimately this is of utmost importance that we get this done as quickly as possible.
How much pushback was there on the Democratic side? Did you see a lot of it? Did you encounter a lot of it?
Yeah, we did. I think the biggest pushback we got was the misinformation that's out there, right? There's a lot of people who are saying this is only a tax cut for the wealthy. We're cutting Medicaid to give this tax break to the wealthy. Nothing could be further from the truth. The majority of this bill is targeted directly at middle-class Americans. President Trump's priority of no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, that's not going to benefit the billionaires and millionaires. That benefits the person who is working every single day at the hipster bar in Marion downtown, where a few miles from where I live, right? So when I think about targeting those tax decreases to those people, that's going to be a shot in the arm for our economy, and that's exactly what we need. And that's why it's disheartening to see that was not a bipartisan vote.
Also, another thing that has come up is Elon Musk leaving Doge and returning to his companies. And I'm not sure if it's the truth or not truth about all of the cuts that he recommended, but it seems like there is a lot of criticism about that, which I don't really understand. So maybe you can explain that. It seemed like he uncovered a lot of government waste, a lot of waste spending. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's certainly been, I've really enjoyed watching the work that they've been able to do, because a lot of this, when I first ran for office, the best advice I got was follow the money, right? And when you look at what we're doing for taxpayers, we finally have an administration that is working with us to peel back those layers of the onion and hopefully figure out a way where we can be more responsible with tax dollars. And so I think that's what is at the key of what Elon and the team that he built have been working on. Some of the examples are, I think, very, very egregious of where money has been going. I mean, we've funneled money for electric vehicles in Vietnam, not here in the United States, but in Vietnam, Sesame Street in Iraq, things like DEI musicals. I mean, we shouldn't be funding that with taxpayer money. We should be funding healthcare projects, infrastructure projects, daycare projects in our districts, things that our constituents are coming to us and saying, hey, you're my representative. This is what I want my taxpayer dollars to go to, not all of these, I would call them the waste, the fraud and abuse that we're rooting out. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything with foreign assistance. I think that's very, very clear. We believe we should be supporting our friends and allies like Israel and other countries that we know are a good investment of United States taxpayer dollars and help further America's interests as well. So that's why I think what Elon has done has been so important for our country. And I think he's left quite a mark and a huge legacy. And I think his work really, it's going to continue for a long time. I know he's now stepped back from this role with Doge, but he's got an incredible team, and he's got Congress now looking at trying to codify as many of those cuts as possible.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that, because they are trying to spin on the news that he is leaving amidst some sort of conflict with the administration. That's what's being spun on the fake news right now. But I am so happy to hear that his work will continue, that Congress will continue to pay attention and maybe even investigate further.
Oh yeah. Well, we're just, like I said, we're just starting to peel back those first layers of the onion. And now that we have an administration that's willing to work with us on that and keep it going, I think that we have a long to-do list to make sure that we're reforming government for the good for the long term.
So you don't think he left on any sort of bad terms?
No, I think it was always his intention to come in and do this, kind of make his mark, make some of these changes, uncover a lot of stuff, and then get the ball rolling. And you look at what the original intent of Doge was when this was proposed, they wanted to be done and through this process by the 4th of July next year, right? That was their whole goal, was to have this done and make some real reforms and changes by next summer. So I think he has gotten things started. I respect him greatly for the work he did to help tee this up for us. And now it's our job as members of Congress to work with the Doge team and keep that ball rolling.
So the abuses that he uncovered, like the things that you mentioned, and then also voting registration in India, for example, all of these, ridiculous expenditures. How are they being cut? Like, how does that work out now? He's uncovered them. Now what happens?
Yeah. So some things, if they're a contract, that can be just ended through the federal government. They can go through that and just end a contract. If it's an actual dollars that we're clawing back, which in some cases it is, if it's been a grant or funding that's gone out, we would claw that back through what's called a rescissions package. And so that's the next step for Congress, is to say, okay, where can we, say, okay, there's $1 million sitting here in this account that's unspent because we said no more. Then Congress can say, we're going to kind of deappropriate that, for lack of a better way of saying it, take it back, and then we can choose to either use that toward the bottom line, we can reinvest it or reallocate it. So that's then our job as appropriators to come in and kind of do that with that laser focus about where those dollars need to go.
So the other thing that he uncovered was abuses of the NGOs. And he specifically spoke about Soros and how he was a master at creating NGOs and getting billions of dollars from our government to then fuel all of these terrible things that are going on the campuses and across our cities in terms of protests. Right. So what is happening with that piece of the Doge equivalent?
Well, I think what's important is we're actually finally pointing out that this is where that money has been flowing, right? We're actually tracing the dollars down to whether it's paying protesters to show up on campuses and protest against Jewish students, or whether it's funding that is, instead of going to relief organizations in the Middle East, it's going directly to terrorist organizations like Hamas or Hezbollah. So us spotlighting that, I think, was step one. Step two is making sure that our oversight committee and our judiciary committee can do the investigations that they need to do. We're certainly doing that. You look at what's even happened with Act Blue, which is the platform that the Democrats have used to funnel in a lot of this money on the donation side, not even the government side, right? So we're taking a look at the whole spectrum of how they've been able to funnel money either through the taxpayer funded grants to the NGOs, or on the side of using Act Blue to funnel those dollars in.
So how does it actually get stopped?
Yeah. Well, I think the key method is to know what's happening, number one. And then number two, for us as appropriators to just say, you can condition dollars to make sure they're not used for something specific. So again, having cabinet secretaries who we know will not stand for this is step one. We know, like Secretary Noem, for example, is not going to allow Homeland Security grants to go down to NGOs that are facilitating illegal immigration. So part of that is making sure we have the right cabinet secretaries in place. The other part is then us being very specific as appropriators about what dollars can and cannot be used for.
So from your vantage point on appropriations and Homeland Security and the Select Committee on Communist China, which is unbelievable that you sit on all of those, how does this bill move the needle on national security? Does it send the right message where America's priorities are, both here at home and on the global stage?
Yeah, I think it does. This is peace through strength, and that strength does take investment. And so whether it's through Department of Defense investment, modernization of our fleet and our force, we have to maintain that competitive advantage. I'm so proud of what they've been able to do in just a few short months with recruitment for our militaries. Obviously, all the branches are meeting their recruitment goals for the first time, I think, in a long time, meeting and exceeding those. But we do need to make strategic investments in shipbuilding and in our military and in protecting our borders. So I think this package is the first step of that. The second step of that comes through the regular appropriations process, which is what we're also working through right now. We've had all of the cabinet secretaries and agency heads in. So we've heard from CBP and ICE. The Coast Guard is under the purview of Homeland Security, and they are seeing an uptick in what they call interdictions in the Caribbean and in Southern California. Because our border is more secure now, the cartels are trying to get around that, obviously. And so the fastest way is by sea. So we need to make sure we're supporting not just our traditional, the Army and the Marines and the Navy and the Coast Guard need to be supported, as well as the Air Force.
Well, I'd like to just move into another area for just a second off of the big, beautiful bill. You are a champion for Israel in the House, and that is remarkable. Could you just tell our listeners where is that coming from?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've cared deeply about just as a Christian is making sure we're supporting people who believe in freedom, who want to be able to worship how they want. And I just have met so many great people who have been able to tell me about the importance of the partnership between the United States and Israel. And I was able to travel there actually a few years ago. It was actually a very meaningful time to be there. It was before October 7th, but it was right when Russia invaded Ukraine. And I still remember being at the Holocaust Museum on our tour that day. And I mean, everybody was just, it was so clear to me how fresh that history was for everyone, and seeing what was happening with Russia and Ukraine really kind of made that raw again. And then we were able to take a visit to one of the kibbutzes that was ravaged by terrorists on October 7th. And so I would say I always have supported Israel, but what happened that day really invigorated my passion to make sure that these terrorists are erased. That's why I care so deeply about tracking that money that's being funneled to Hamas. We have to stop that so that they are completely eliminated from the face of the planet. And we cannot rest until that happens.
So that's unbelievable, to hear you speak about that. Do you think there's a growing understanding, both in Congress and across the country, that we're not facing isolated issues here? It's a broader war against Western values. This isn't about Israel as an apartheid state or any of the nonsense that we hear. Mm-hmm. It's a coordinated effort to undermine everything American and what our allies stand for. Israel is being like masqueraded almost as an issue, but it's really not the issue. This is really a war on Western values. And what I'm a little bit fearful of is that that's getting lost, that they're accomplishing their goal by villainizing Israel to a lot of Americans across the country. And people are losing sight of the fact that, no, this is a war on America, a real effort. The Chinese government, Iran, all of these terrible players. This is a concerted effort to undermine America and American values. Do you see that? I'm sure you see that, but do you see that people across America and the rest of the people in Congress understand that?
Yeah, well, I would say that for the most part, this continues to be a very bipartisan issue, protecting the relationship with Israel, protecting countries and freedom-loving allies like Israel. I think that this is an issue that separates really the left-wing Hamas radicals of the Democratic Party from those who still have common sense and can really understand the importance of standing up to the anti-Semitism and the war that we're seeing against the West. And, when we talk about Iran, you mentioned Iran being such a threat. You have people in the streets of Iran shouting death to Israel, death to the United States, right? So it's that order. They do believe that Western culture is evil, and they want to see us wiped out. So it is up to us as members of Congress, those of people like you, Trudy, who have a good platform, who can get out there and tell the stories of why they're wrong, right? Why supporting freedom is important, and really at the heart of you look at the countries that are our adversaries right now, versus who are our allies. Our adversaries are countries like the CCP, China, right? Russia, Iran. And what is it? This is ultimately about control over their people, which is the opposite of the freedom that we are able to experience here and the freedom that they have in Israel too. So I think this is absolutely something that's worth standing up for and continuing to tell the story of, and making sure that on the funding side, since I sit on the check writing committee, that we're supporting our freedom loving allies with the military support, and continuing to have all those other good economic partnerships that we have.
So I definitely understand that that is theoretically a very, very important thing, and I so appreciate you for where you are and what you've sacrificed to be there. I'm just so concerned that the average individual in this country is just not seeing it that way. When you see the college campuses and the students that don't know what they're saying, like joining in, and you see members of the LGBT community screaming, free, free Palestine, and, wanting freedom for Gaza. It's so disheartening because it's not about Israel. Right now, I'm speaking as an American. I'm speaking as a fourth generation American with children and grandchildren to worry about going forward. And this is not a new story. This is clearly an attack on our values. It's World War II all over again, and it just seems like that message is not clear.
Yeah. Well, that's again, it's critical that we continue to tell that story, because the rise of anti-Semitism that we've seen in the country, especially following the October 7th attacks, it's alarming. I think it should be alarming whether or not you're a Democrat or a Republican. And I think that the anti-Semitic riots that we've been seeing on these college campuses across the country really revealed, I think, some of the rot in our higher education systems and the need for accountability there. And I think that we can't let that go unanswered. So I want to say thank you to the Trump administration. They are taking this very seriously. The Biden administration, I felt like, was really trying to have it both ways. They were trying to support the Free Palestine movement while still saying, "Oh yeah, we support Israel." Well, they were sending the wrong message to to the world as well by doing that. They were trying to do that to not turn off their far left base here. So we absolutely need to stand up for it. We need to encourage accountability with funding streams to these college campuses. If they're not standing up for that, this is hate speech, plain and simple, on these campuses, and that should never be tolerated or allowed.
Well, it's indoctrination also. It's happening in K through 12, and it's really an effort on the part of the communist Chinese government.
Yeah, and what's interesting, you see that happening, these sister cities and sister classrooms, and they will offer to pay it's all about the influence game, right? And they will offer to pay to take a whole class over to China to, again, it's all about the indoctrination. And so I think we have to put a stop to that. We've started ending, for instance, the Confucius Institutes that have popped up around the country that are simply propaganda for the CCP. But again, we know that those dollars are flowing in from all of our adversaries to sow this discord and this misinformation on our campuses, in our K-12 institutions, and frankly, on social media as well.
It seems like the committees that you sit on are really the hot button committees in terms of what's been happening. I don't know where Congress has been before this point to allow us to have gotten to this point. It seems like we're in a very bad place right now. Do you think there's a way to reverse everything that has happened? It seems like almost impossible.
Yeah, well, I think that, again, I do think that, especially in Congress, this has been a long bipartisan issue that we care about, and we want to stand up to hate speech. We want to stand up to that indoctrination, and I do think the foundation's a bit shaky right now, but there is a small but vocal wing of the Democrat Party. We see it in Congress on display frequently. That is openly anti-Semitic and really supports the grotesque things that are happening. But fortunately, I do not believe that this is widespread. Again, I think this is a widely bipartisan issue for serious members of Congress, which I would argue is most of us. And I think, I look at my support for Israel, it's unshakable. Everybody I talk to on a regular basis feel the same way. And again, we don't want to see a repeat of history here. And you reference it feels like it's World War II time over and over again, which is why we can't make the same mistake where people felt like they could be silent. We can't do that anymore.
Well, thank you so much for your service and for being such a tremendous voice for everything that's good and right. It is so hard to believe, but our time together is already coming to a close. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. You could have stayed in a studio with perfect lighting and a teleprompter, but instead you chose the chaos of Congress, late night votes, fights over things like whether we should be funding NPR. And for that, we are genuinely grateful.
Well, thank you, Trudy. Thank you for having me on, and continue to tell the truth. And we'll continue to do very good work for the people of Iowa and this country.
Well, thank you so much. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy Stern. You can catch us every Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. on the radio. And if you missed any part of this show or want to listen to any of our past episodes, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.